Cabin Sports Radio.
Here comes the siren. I want to go higher. Oh, my goodness. Batista with a drive. Deep left field. Go, Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
Oh, baby, for sure.
Cabin Sports Radio starts now.
Unbreakable Mike Gibbons showing off his basketball skills here in the studio just moments ago, right off the bat. Just a rim and out.
Yeah, a little rusty.
What is that?
It's been a while. A Halls wrapper.
Oh, Halls
Didn't
wrapper.
make it. I don't even have a cold.
I thought it was a piece of gum at first.
No,
I was
no,
like,
no.
Mike, I'm glad you're comfortable in Studio One.
Yeah.
That's it.
In the time of COVID, that would be very irresponsible. At any time. That's just unhygienic. I wouldn't do that to you.
Mike Gibbons shuts down Cabin Radio.
Yeah.
Second live show back in Studio One. Welcome to Cabin Sports Radio. Yet to be shut down, but we are enjoying what we're seeing of the sports world amidst the shutdown and the pandemic. Lots to talk about today. NHL news, CFL, very unfortunate news. NBA Toronto Raptors kicked off the first game of their playoff journey. Yeah, let's call it a journey. That's a nice word. So lots to get into on the show. And I just like, right off the top, before we get into it too much, I would just like to say my condolences to Braden Shen's ankles and to Jaden Schwartz jockstrap, which is still dangling somewhere in the rafters of Rogers Arena. My God, did you see that Bo Horvat goal?
Yeah, that was nice.
Holy.
Real nice. The legend of Bo Horvat, eh?
That might have been one of the prettiest things I've ever seen.
That was really nice.
Oh, my God.
An OT winner. No less, eh? That was something special.
Unbelievable. But we can't dwell on that for too long, as much as we'd like to. Again, Braden Shen's ankle still recovering. But let's get into the CSR headlines. A look at all the things that happened in the past week of sports, because there were some things. Oh, were there things. And Mr. Mike Gibbons is going to take us through those in 3, 2, 1.
Boston Bruins goaltender Tuukka Rask opted out of the NHL's postseason over the weekend. The veteran netminder cited family reasons for his decision to leave Toronto and return home. Rask appeared in 4 games since the NHL resumed play, posting 1 win in those contests. Boston will now turn to Yaroslav Halak as the club tries to win its first Stanley Cup since 2011.
Now, you would think that in these trying times, these uncertain, these strange times, people would have a little sympathy for someone's plight. Whatever they're going through, whatever it happens to be, if it's a personal thing, if it's a family thing, if it's another thing entirely, you would think at this time of all times, there would be a little sympathy, especially from one's own team. Boston Bruins fans losing their mind a little bit about that one.
Did we expect anything less?
I mean, I guess not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I now to put it into perspective. Now, Tuukka Rask is an all-time goaltender, Vezina Trophy finalist. I don't know if he's won the Vezina Trophy.
He has before.
He has before.
Yeah, I do
okay.
believe. I will absolutely confirm, but I'm pretty positive.
Yeah.
Even this year, 929 save percentage. I think over the course of the regular season.
Yeah.
He struggled a little bit since the resumption of play, so I don't think that factored into his decision, but maybe he just wasn't in the right headspace,
right?
As I'm sure we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, we're talking about one of the best goalies in the entire league right now, and has been for the past couple of years.
Yeah, over the past 10 or so years, he has been, without question, I think one of the elite goaltenders in the league. I mean, it was even, in the World Juniors, that was where he really made his name before he even played a game in the NHL. He was absolutely stood on his head for Team Finland. How many years ago would that have been now? Like 2007?
Yeah.
2008, around there. He was the talk of the tournament, and I don't think Finland, they might have won a bronze that year.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure if they even medaled, but Tuukka Rask was the talk of the tournament, regardless of any other team, whoever won. Probably Canada. I don't know. But That was when the legend originally grew. Then, of course, he was famously drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes.
Traded in the infamous Andrew Raycroft trade, the one before the infamous Phil Kessel trade. They've made some really bad trades with the Boston Bruins, haven't they? Anyway, that's one
they
that
love to poke fun at them for
they
that
do.
Too.
They really
and
do.
They deserve every bit of criticism that comes their way.
But that is one that Toronto Maple Leaf fans have not been able to forget because Tuukka Rask has given them absolutely no reason to forget that trade throughout his career thus far. One thing I didn't know when hearing this story, reading about it, seeing some reactions from Boston Bruins fans' Twitter, I didn't know that Tuukka Rask already had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Boston Bruins fans. Apparently, he is not super well liked.
Oh,
were you aware of this?
Not really. No. How do you not like the guy?
I mean, I don't know. Like he's had a few incidents of like questionable timing. There was one a few years ago. There was some like sitting out of a kind of a crucial game because he had diarrhea. Like I mean, again, no.
I'm sorry.
Can you blame someone for sitting out when they're not completely under control?
Right.
On the inside. There was something else too. It's just had, and I mean, even when they won the Stanley Cup in 2010, which seems like, man, so long ago.
Ages ago, right? Against the Vancouver Canucks. Everyone remembers that?
Yeah, and I think he had a phenomenal season, regular season that year. Kind of split time with Tim Thomas. I think Rask started the majority of the games of the regular season, but then didn't fare so well in the first round of the playoffs. The Bruins went with Thomas, and then he just carried the torch through to the Stanley Cup Finals. I don't know if that factors in the fact that he looked like he was a guy. I mean, he was maybe like 20, 21 years old, if that. And maybe right out of the bat, Bruins fans just had a feeling that this was a guy who maybe didn't have the mental toughness to make it through the Stanley Cup playoffs, which, as we all know, is it's a physical grind, let alone a mental grind, getting through that last portion of the season. So maybe that had something to do with it. Obviously, he's had 2 shots now in the Stanley Cup Finals and has come up short with the Bruins. 2013 lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, and then of course last year falling short to the St. Louis Blues. But I mean, I don't think either of those losses necessarily fall on Tuukka Rask.
No. Well, Game 7, I don't think they were shut out for 55 or so minutes of the. I think I want to say the final score was 4-1 or something like that. They didn't even get on the board until late. So the perfection line didn't come through. There was a number of reasons why they weren't able to crack. But 2014 was when he won his first and only Vezina.
First Vezina.
So
I
mean. And you alluded to him getting some ice time during their Stanley Cup Finals run in 2011. So he's been a very good goaltender for a very long time. Hasn't had the pinnacle of success. Hasn't won as a starting goaltender in the Stanley Cup Finals, but a perennial Vezina candidate at least. And is always in the running. Had a really good crease mate with Yaroslav Halak, who will now take the reins now this year. But he's always been in the mix.
Yes.
So we're talking about a very, very good goaltender.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I guess if you're a Tuukka Rask naysayer and you're looking for reasons to back up that opinion, you could say that, without question, he has benefited from playing behind one of the stingiest team defenses in all of hockey for the past decade or so. I remember Martin Brodeur got often treated the same way, when it came to people putting out their opinions as to who the greatest goaltender of all time was. There was, you'd have people saying Patrick Waugh, you'd have people saying Terry Sawchuk, if you wanted to go back, way back into the vault, player names like this. And Martin Brodeur, when he started getting thrown into the mix, kind of the contrary was that, well, he played behind Scott Stevens, Scott Niedermayer, Ken Danico, a really, really solid defense and just team, like the team that ultimately really made famous the neutral zone trap.
Right.
Team that was defense first. They smothered you. They suffocated you. and then, just got enough offense to get by. And that was always kind of the takeaway from those who maybe thought that Martin Brodeur didn't deserve to be up in Dominic Hasek. That's another one in the argument. How could I forget about that guy? It was always that he benefited from playing in the New Jersey Devils defensive system. I think probably the same argument could be made with Tuukka Rask. But you look down his career, and I mean, the numbers, they're no joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he's got like a career goals against average of like 227, something ridiculous like that. Career save percentage of like 922.
Mm-hmm.
I think like 50 career shutouts I saw. Like, the guy has put together a fantastic career regardless of who he's playing behind. He can't control that, and I don't know why he would decide to go elsewhere unless it was fans that just hate him for apparently no reason. But nevertheless, that's kind of what I discovered today, looking a little bit deeper into this, that for some reason Boston Bruins fans have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Tuukka Rask. And the only thing that I feel like you could, if you wanted to boil it down to a simple point, it is that he has not got the job done. He has not himself, brought home a Stanley Cup for the franchise. Of course, he was the backup with Tim Thomas. So he does have a Stanley Cup on his resume, but he was not the guy between the pipes. But you know who else never won a Stanley Cup for the Boston Bruins? All-time franchise leading scorer, longtime captain, one of the best defensemen of all time in NHL history, Ray Bourque.
There you go.
Never got it done. I wonder what Boston Bruins fans think of him.
Yeah.
Was he a choker too? Or was he just not on as good a team? I mean, if that's what you're going to boil it down to, then are you really going to call Ray Bourque a choke artist?
Yeah. Well, they're going to boil it down to Tuukka quitting on his team, right? During the and hey, we're talking about the President's Trophy winners. Got all the way to Game 7 last year of the Stanley Cup Finals. Couldn't get the job done. Had as good a chance as anyone at claiming the Stanley Cup this year. Weren't able to secure the first seed after a pretty rough pre-qualifying round against Philly, Washington, and New York Islanders as the top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference. Didn't get off to the start they wanted to, and Rask was admittedly a little shaky. So there's some frustration there. I think at the end of the day, we're talking about Boston, a city with some of the most storied sports franchises there are. The Boston Celtics, right up there with the Lakers for the most amount of titles ever. Of course, the Bruins, one of the original 6 in the NHL. I think they've got 6 cups. The Red Sox, one of the most storied franchises in all of Major League Baseball. A very passionate fan base for every single team that they roll out.
And they're they expect to win.
Yeah, and even look at everyone knows who Jack Edwards is, commentator for the Boston Bruins, one of the most infamous homers in all of sports broadcasting. They love their teams. And they expect them, every single one of them. The Boston Celtics are in the playoff mix as we speak. I believe they're playing Game 1 of their opening round series right now against the 76ers. The Red Sox always have one of the highest payrolls in all of baseball. Last one 2 years ago. They're perennial contenders. They expect their teams to compete at the highest level. They're a sports town through and through, and they will ride their guys. You can become famous in Boston real quick. Think about the David Ortiz. They've always had these sort of focal points for each of their sports teams. They are a huge sports town, and I think that's what they're going to boil it down to. Is Tuukka at the end of the day quit on them? A team that had a really legitimate chance to go deep. And still probably do. Got a pretty tough first-round matchup against the Hurricanes right now, who they faced in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Get through that, and who knows how far this team can go. They have as good a chance, I think, as anyone. I think when the news came down on Saturday, though, I wasn't overly shocked. I was out of cell range when it happened. I think one of my friends posted it in a group chat. And I could tell by the conversation right away that Tuukka had opted out of the return to play in the postseason for the rest of the way. Has a newborn at home, has 2 other young girls, so there are legitimate family concerns there. I think he might have been one of the players, too, that expressed a little bit of apprehension even before the NHL's return to play. And And there were some comments, I believe it was last week, about how it's hard to play right now.
Yeah.
And he didn't even allude to any of the family issues going on. It was more, I think he said something along the lines of, it feels like we're playing exhibition games right now.
Yeah, the energy wasn't there for him.
Yeah.
And fair enough. I'm sure he's not the only one that's feeling that way. Like, I mean, but you got to get up. You got to find a way to get up. And, but I don't think that, and I think that's probably what's weighing into some of the frustration of Bruins fans is that they probably felt like, I don't know. Maybe there's a thought that like the family emergency was just something you say because you need to make it more important than saying my heart's not in it.
Yeah,
when you've already been playing, like that's not enough. Like that's not a reason to leave, or it's not a legitimate reason to leave, right? So, but apparently there was a legitimate family emergency. The details of what that situation was haven't really come out, and nor should
they. And they might not. Yeah.
Nor should they. Exactly. It's a private family matter. That's all really any of us needs to know. Apparently, I did read some update that whatever the situation was, it's okay now.
Yeah,
like it's under control.
I saw that as well. Yeah.
But nevertheless, obviously, if you're far away from your young family and something very serious potentially has come up, it's going to change your whole perspective and your whole outlook as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you're not with your family. And like Tuukka himself said, there are some things more important than hockey, and he is taking care of those things right now. Now, what I don't know is that if he decides that, things are okay, things are under control, I want to perhaps go rejoin my team. I think that's an option to re-enter the bubble. I assume that it would be kind of a similar protocol to when all of the teams were traveling to their respective bubbles, Edmonton or Toronto. They had to pass a series of COVID tests. And then be determined fit to travel, and then probably have another test upon arrival in the bubble. I don't even know it. Like, that's probably not even really something that he's thinking about right now. I'm sure he's just happy to be home with his family and taking that time with them, and dealing with whatever the situation was. But yeah, that'd be interesting to know if we go a couple weeks from now, how he feels about that. And also how his teammates would feel about that. Now, luckily for the Boston Bruins, they got a pretty good backup goaltender in Yaroslav Halak, who has a lot of playoff experience. Of course, Montreal Canadiens fans will remember him going on a deep run as their starting goaltender ahead of Carey Price.
That's right.
Because he had outplayed him at the time. It was a very young Carey Price. And Yaroslav Halak was phenomenal for them, and he had a couple, runs with the New York Islanders in the past few years. That's right. He's a great goalie. Yeah, he can absolutely get the job done for them. And I couldn't help but personally think, imagine this scenario for, say, the Toronto Maple Leafs last year. They have Jack Campbell now. They addressed their backup goalie troubles because it became obvious this regular season that Michael Hutchinson, should something happen to Freddie Anderson, was not going to be a legitimate option as a backup goaltender, or as a starting goaltender, rather. Can you imagine if this had all happened last year and, like, Michael Hutchinson or Garrett Sparks was the next guy in? Freddie Anderson has some family emergency, has to head back home. All right, Leaf fans. Get ready.
Oh, yeah. Boston definitely one of the few teams in the NHL who can rely on a really sturdy backup goaltender. And we saw a number of teams, especially the higher-seeded teams, roll out tandem goaltending duos throughout the course of the regular season. I think Binnington dropped his... so Vancouver, of course, up 2-1 in their series against the Blues. I think he dropped the first two. I think they rolled out with Jake Allen.
Oh, did they?
In Game 3.
Oh, wow.
Which St. Louis won last night in overtime. So there have been a number of the top-seeded teams that have rolled out the 1-2 punch all year long. I think almost splitting games 50-50, and it worked for them. I think Holtby and Samsonov in Washington, Greiss and Varlamov, I believe, in New York. Almost every top team in the NHL rolled out 2 goalies this year, and it paid dividends.
And Columbus, too, again. Their preliminary series against the Leafs.
And Korpisalo, who both were at different times just outstanding. So nice that you can rely on that if it comes to that situation. You're right. I think as soon as you throw out the word family, you like to think that people will back off. Who's going to question that, right?
Right.
Of course, passionate hockey fans might. At this point, all of his teammates saying the right things. I think Don Sweeney and the management team being very supportive of his decision. Same with the players, right?
Yep.
Like, that was not a decision that was made lightly. It would have come after several hours of deliberation, and not one that you wouldn't want to even come to announcing, but he felt like he needed to, and props to him. We knew that this would be an issue, and it was during the collective bargaining agreement discussions when they were trying to finalize a return to play. That was a genuine concern when the issue of hub cities came up. Unless, even if you're from that hub city, like if you're a member of the Edmonton Oilers, it's not like, yeah, sure, you're in your home city, but you're not allowed to go outside of the bubble. So you might not get a chance to see your family as well. So especially for some of the older guys with families, we knew that this was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe this sets the stage. Maybe there are some other players that are internally dealing with their own issues, being away from their own families, and maybe we see some other issues and some other players back out as well. But hopefully, it sounds like all is good on the home front. Props to him for making that very public decision, and to his teammates and management for so far saying the right thing, and hope all ends up well with Mr. Rask. And like you said, the Bruins are in pretty good hands.
Long story short, don't listen to the fans.
Don't listen to the fans. And hopefully, for their sake, Yaroslav can take them deep, which I'm sure he can. I think they're up 2-1 in their series against the Hurricanes, a chance to take a stranglehold tonight and punch their ticket to the next round. And Yaroslav Halak is as good as anyone in the backup role, so they've got a chance to do it. What do you say we move on?
Let's do it.
A little CFL?
Yeah, I think that's enough on the Bruins.
All right. I'm sorry. You're not going to like this next one. The Canadian Football League has officially canceled its 2020 season due to COVID-19. The decision, which was announced today, means the Grey Cup won't be presented for the first time since 1919. The announcement comes after the league was unable to secure financial assistance from the federal government. The league had requested a $30 million interest-free loan, but the two sides couldn't come to terms on a deal. It was the CFL's last-ditch effort to stage an abbreviated season in the hub city of Winnipeg.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to your 2021 reigning Grey Cup champion, Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
That's right.
They didn't even have to win a game.
I know. That must feel real good. I think the Toronto Raptors are the longest reigning defending NBA champions as well. So both of our teams holding on to that glory. I guess, so we were talking about some of the other leagues and how there have been 2 times the Stanley Cup has not been awarded.
Yes.
1919, 2013 for the lockout shortened season. 1919, of course, the Spanish flu. So perhaps that was the same reason. I'm guessing that the CFL didn't.
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That lousy Spanish flu.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like derailed things in the between the Metropolitans we were talking about the other week.
Oh yeah.
The old Seattle team from back in the day.
Yep.
The Grey Cup, and I mean that gives you an idea as to how kind of a big deal this is for the CFL. It's a league that's been around a long time, and unfortunately, I mean, if you're a regular listener to this show, I mean you've heard my feelings and my thoughts as to how things were going. I've had a pretty strong feeling for the last 3 weeks to a month that this was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the CFL really like exhausting every possible option, and I mean you have to give them credit for that. They wanted to absolutely turn over every stone possible before making what is obviously a very difficult decision. But you know, a lot of the thought has been that this is it's a tough ask for a largely gate-driven league.
Yeah,
they don't have the kind of sponsorships, TV contracts that the major for the the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, MLB. They can't get by on this type of scenario when it's just going by TV audience because they simply don't have the sponsors. The money is not there.
Yeah.
So it would have been very tough to make a go of this season. I mean, I think they had a solid plan, without being allowed to have live audiences go and take in the games. I think they came up with about the only plan that the CFL could come up with. So, it sounds weird to say for a group that didn't eventually get it done, but kudos to Randy Ambrosie for all the hard work he did. He took a lot of heat, right from the start when we were mid-pandemic, and we knew that the CFL training camp season was going to be pushed back. We knew the regular season was going to be pushed back, and they went to the feds and asked. I think it was for like $150 million.
Yeah.
Now that was a bit hasty. I mean, they knew that they were going to need some financial assistance. They weren't asking for a grant. They were asking for a loan and to work out a deal to pay it back long term, which even that I think is probably pretty ambitious for the CFL. Like, this is a league that does not make a ton of profit.
No.
You've got a handful of teams. I mean, the whole league is made up of a handful of teams, but you've got one handful, that's basically funding the other handful of teams to make up for the losses that they inevitably incur. The ludicrous thing about that is that one of those teams that loses money being in Toronto, of all places, it gives you an idea as to the weird situation that the CFL has to navigate every season. I think Bob Irving, who we talked about last week, got his Grey Cup ring with the 2019 Winnipeg Blue Bombers win. He put it the best way that I think I'd seen anyone put it, which is the ownership group of the CFL can best be described as Canadian pro sports philanthropists. They're not in it to make money. They know they're not going to make money. So if they were in it to make money, they would be really terrible businessmen.
Yeah.
They are a group of business owners who like the CFL. They like the Canadian football game. They are big fans of it, just the same as any other fan, and they just want to see it succeed. They want to see the league thrive and are happy to put the money behind it to support it. That money and that support is going to be more important now than ever. I mean, I don't know what the future of the league holds. There was a lot of pretty grim projections from people who may or may not really know what they're talking about. Only the CFL ownership group, Randy Ambrosie and co, really knows what the total situation is right now. But I mean, this really didn't surprise me. If anything, I was surprised that this announcement didn't come sooner.
Yeah.
Because as we mentioned, about a month ago, maybe like 3 weeks ago, they had a drop dead date of July 31st, where it was like, if we have news to report, if there's good news, we'll go ahead and announce the season's happening July 31st. If we can't make it happen, that's the deadline. That's it after that day. It kind of dragged on. Obviously we're not seeing the results and hearing the answers that they wanted, so they tried to stretch it out as long as they could. But nevertheless, this is the end result. The league is canceled for the 2020 regular season. I really started to get bad feelings about it when I was optimistic for a while, when they were, just basically like saying that they were going to make every effort to make this happen. They had a plan. They were going to put, wheels in motion to put it in place. But then when I had seen reports that the CFL had tabled their return to play contracts, and you had players tweeting about it on their social media, basically saying that it was a joke. Yeah. It was the 6-game regular season return to play, massively reduced salaries, which on one hand you could think, well, the league's not making the revenue. Part of that is going to fall on the players. But in this kind of situation, unprecedented, albeit, but the players are the ones taking on 100% of the risk. You've got to pay the players. Yeah. You've got to pay, especially because the league is still 90 or so % American players. And these are guys who they understand that they're not making a ton of money as it is. They're ultimately playing so that they can have a shot at the NFL again.
Totally.
They, obviously, whether they got overlooked their first time or they just weren't ready, or whatever else, they are playing in the CFL in Canada for a hope to have another shot at the NFL. Everyone in the CFL understands that. It's not like anyone is, thinking that players come from, the college football system in the States with a dream to play for the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Right.
Like, no one's under any illusions of that. Even Saskatchewan Roughriders fans aren't under that illusion. But they all know that they are not going to make the same type of money. So when you are asking players to cross the border into a different country and you put contracts in front of them that are basically a slap in the face.
Yeah.
You got to make it worth it for them. Mm-hmm. They were on, even if this season did happen, there was a lot of talk of players who already said that they were not going to play. Last year's most outstanding player, Brandon Banks, already said he wasn't going to play. That's a major blow to a league that doesn't have a ton of marketability as it is. And then you have your top player saying he's not going to play, even if the Players Association does accept the deal. Things were looking really grim for a while. But yeah, when I saw that basically they were trying to put the inevitable financial losses on the players, it's not the players' responsibility to prop up the league. Like I say, especially when they're in a situation where they're taking 100% of the risk, and that risk being even greater than just football, which is a risk.
Yeah, in itself.
It is.
Now throwing a pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to pay the players.
Yeah.
They fell short of that, and nevertheless, there we have it.
Yeah. Well, the issue of prorated salaries, an ongoing issue when collective bargaining agreements were being worked out at MLB, NBA as well. It's always going to be an issue when you're talking about shortened seasons and how do you compensate people fairly. And like you said, the players taking on all the risk. Probably almost entirely, I'd imagine, gate-driven revenues for the Canadian Football League. They don't have the same television rights and contracts. The NBA, for instance, massive viewership outside of the United States.
Yeah.
Obviously, in Canada, big time overseas as well. Europe and China, massive markets where they can expand and showcase their game to the world. I imagine viewership for the CFL, not that huge outside of the borders of Canada.
No,
even within the borders. It's,
you got some leftover fans from the CFL's ill-fated American expansion.
Right.
You randomly hear sometimes from fans in Baltimore and Shreveport.
Yep.
And, Birmingham,
There you
places
go.
like this. But, not outside of Canada.
No.
Not a whole lot.
So when we were talking about, resumption of play for all the major sports leagues, and then we started talking about the CFL, right from the get-go, the outlook was much more grim.
Yeah.
It made its way all the way to a finance committee. I want to say in the House of Commons. Randy Ambrosi and some of his partners had to speak in the House and got grilled by MPs.
Yeah. That was a bad sign right off the bat.
Yeah. So right away, and I think that's when the figure that they were requesting was, like you said, 5 times higher. It was around $150 million to get a season up and running. At the time, I think there was more optimism that they could get an entire season, or at least that's what they were shooting for.
Yeah.
And it became clear the longer it dragged out that we were looking at an abbreviated season, all the way down to 6 games in the hub city of Winnipeg. So I think both you and I and CFL fans across the country were growing increasingly worrisome, pessimistic that a season would actually get off the ground. I've seen Randy take a little bit of heat recently. Do you think that's undue? Is that unwarranted? Mostly from pundits and sports analysts saying, well, this is what happens when you go asking for money and you don't submit a real plan. Maybe this is because it became much more public than he would have liked, with, like you said, some of the star players coming out and not exactly being in favor of the proposed plan.
Mm-hmm.
Is some of this unwarranted, though, his approach to trying to get a season off the ground?
I mean, it's to be expected, I guess, when you're the focal point. Regardless whether it was Randy Ambrosie or any past CFL commissioner, in this situation, there was going to be heat because the Canadian Football League was up against it.
Yeah.
Right from the start. You knew that it was going to be tough, especially as we saw how the pandemic was playing out. At first in March, the thought was, okay, well, let's nip this in the bud.
Yeah. This
is going to be quick, and we'll be back to normal life, next month.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of optimism, I think, at that time because it was, they weren't in the middle of the season like the NHL and the NBA. They didn't have to figure out what to do with that or when to come back or if to come back. They had a little time to play with, and they had a little bit of time to plan. I don't know necessarily, I don't have any backroom knowledge to know if they used that time effectively or if they were kind of as surprised as anyone else that the pandemic played out the way it did and that we're still, very much in the thick of it.
Yeah.
Although things are getting better, but, still a long way away from it being okay to have 20 to 25,000 people in attendance for an event. Like that's it was crazy to think too that in March that we wouldn't be back to that by August. I think for a lot of people, I think there were a lot of people who knew full well that we would not be back to that by this time. But for the general public, who was just kind of hoping things would all work out. I think there was a lot of optimism. I think they knew that they were going to need financial assistance. I think that they maybe were a bit naive with the $150 million ask. Maybe they were just thinking, hey, federal government's just kind of doling out money left and right to support people. Like, well, we are a storied league in this country. Part of its sport fabric, really. And it would behoove the Canadian government to support us and make sure that we survive. But you got to have a plan. Yeah. And that seemed to be the biggest focal point where the criticism came for Randy Ambrosie was that they did not have a fully fleshed out plan as to where they were going to use that $150 million. They didn't even know. I don't think they even had a concept of the whole bubble city thing yet. Like I think the thought was still, hey, maybe we can just like push the season back, have a 9-game season rather than 18. And, by Labor Day weekend, things will be normal again, right? So, I mean, I don't think necessarily that any other commissioner in CFL's past would have handled this better. I think probably, if anything, they were in a better position with Randy Ambrosie being kind of more of a business-oriented guy to survive this than with many of their past commissioners. Yeah. Nevertheless, I can't help but feel that, perhaps something was underestimated about, whether the Canadian government would push back or whether or not we would still be in this situation. Definitely something was underestimated. I think they worked as hard as they possibly could to find solutions, but they were already on the clock. They had a lot of stuff working against them. And I think, as more time went by, it just became increasingly obvious that it just wasn't going to happen. So unfortunate. Hopefully, obviously everyone, all the respective franchises putting out statements, saying, see you again in 2021. Yeah. Hopefully there is absolute reason for that kind of optimism. Yep. I don't know, but if it doesn't happen, well, then let it be known that the league ended the way it should with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Grey Cup champions.
Reigning 2-time defending.
That's right.
Grey Cup champs. Unfortunate, as you said, because in the court of public opinion, this does look like a loss, and that's what people are going to chalk it up to, pundits, analysts. But so much more working against them, right? Yeah. And when you're operating with fewer revenues, it's just that much more of an uphill battle. Absolutely. The MLB still, Rob Manfred, in the eyes of many, maybe he's even worse off than Ambrosie right now because he's continually putting players at more of a risk.
Right.
It feels like every second day or every couple days you're reading about more cases cropping up with a different set of guys on a different team.
Yeah.
Because they didn't figure out the bubble situation. They've got teams traveling, and we've now seen numerous outbreaks on different teams. So the court of public opinion matters, and in the eyes of many, those can be chalked up to losses. Seems like the NHL, for its part, 0 positive tests after they've established the bubble.
Killing it.
Same with the NBA and Orlando. They seem to have figured things out. But again, we're all learning to fly at the same time here. Yeah. We've never faced anything like this in our lifetime. The fact that the last time this even happened was in 1919, the last time a Grey Cup wasn't handed out. That tells you.
Pretty good run.
Right? That tells you the seriousness of the situation. So I think it'd be unfair to levy that much criticism towards groups of people who are honestly just trying to make things work.
Yeah.
And some folks have different things working against them than others. It's unfortunate they weren't able to get it done, but as you said, hopefully in 2021 we can come back strong.
Let's take a quick break, come back, and we'll talk some Toronto Raptors starting the NBA playoffs next on Cabin Sports Radio.
You're listening to Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward.
Cabin Sports Radio, brought to you by Sport North, moving sport forward. The 68th annual Peterson and Auger Golf Tournament is all set to go at the end of this month, August 28th, at the Yellowknife Golf Club, raising money for Kids Sport NWT. I believe, and off the top of my head, I actually can't remember when the application deadline was. I think they maybe, if you ask really nicely, you're super polite about it, and you want to get in on the golf tournament, you may still be able to get in and find yourself a spot. Go to sportnorth.com or email Dakota Earl, who is organizing the tournament this year. You can get a hold of Dakota at dearle, DEARLE, at sportnorth.com. Again, be very polite, be very sweet, and she may find a spot for you. The 68th annual Peterson and Auger Golf Tournament, very much looking forward to that. Cabin Radio will be there. Will you? Also, very exciting news, the local sports scene here in Yellowknife. Yellowknife's own David Gilday inducted into the Speed Skating Canada Hall of Fame this past weekend in the Builder category. David spoke with our own Sarah Price here at Cabin Radio on the phone, told us a little story about his coaching days.
Years and years ago, we took a group of Yellowknife kids down to, it was in Medicine Hat. It was a year-end meet there. It was a big meet. I guess the one we trained kids for every year. It was a family-oriented meet, but a little girl here named Alana Demko, she was going up against Jessica Gregg, who was wound up on the national team and did 2 or 3 Olympics. And there were several girls in her age category who ended up in the Olympics. I spotted her crying as she was getting ready for her race. And there's no question, she was outmatched in this thing. These were taller girls. They were, very great athletes for the age. They were probably only about 12 years old or something. Anyway, I asked her what the problem was. She said, I can't do this. I can't race against these girls. So I suggested to her that what she do, and I knew she couldn't beat them. I said, go to the start of the race and go as fast as you can for as long as you can. And when they pass you, just fight as hard as you can to stick behind them. Drafting is a big deal. You get about a 20% advantage if you're drafting somebody. So I said to her, draft these other girls, and then let's just see how well you can do. Race ended. She was dead last. I showed her the stopwatch, and you'd think she'd won the Olympics. She laid down a time that it makes me emotional thinking of this. She laid down the best time she'd ever laid. And it was fabulous. She was just so happy with herself. And that's what this sport can achieve for kids. We can take any kid who has any level of confidence, and we can increase that kid's level of confidence.
That's David Gilday, Yellowknife's own David Gilday, heading into the Speed Skating Canada Hall of Fame, joining Gene Wilson also, who was inducted, competed for Canada in the 1932 Olympics. So very exciting weekend for us up here in the North, and congratulations to David Gilday and the entire Gilday family, just continuing to create absolute legend in sports here in the North. So go to sportnorth.com and you can read more about that. You can also check out more about that at speedskating.ca. All right, Mike, the Toronto Raptors kicked off the playoff portion of the return to play for the NBA here. We knew last week that they had already clinched second place in the East, and they were going to face the Brooklyn Nets in their opening round series. They finished the first game. I'll let you take it from here. Go
Pretty
ahead.
convincingly. The Toronto Raptors cruised to a 134-110 win over the Brooklyn Nets to open up the 2020 NBA playoffs earlier today. Guard Fred VanVleet led the way for the defending champions with 30 points and 11 assists. Toronto shot a sizzling 22 of 44 from beyond the arc as they overwhelmed their division rival, who are playing without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Game 2 scheduled for Wednesday afternoon.
Now, 134-110. Not a whole lot of defense in Game 1. Is this kind of what you expected from the start of the Raptors series with the Brooklyn Nets? Is it kind of, you think it's kind of a situation with, you know what, let's just hit them with everything we got, and if they can defend it, well, then we will have to defend them, but we're going to outscore them.
I think we were talking about it a little bit last week as well. And now, for the first time this season, because of all the man games lost for the Toronto Raptors, I think they are number one in the NBA for man games lost. This is the first time Nick Nurse has had a fully healthy squad. So there was some curiosity to how he was going to tinker with the starting lineup. Serge Ibaka now coming off the bench. Fred VanVleet, who has just excelled this year, really elevated his level of play. Unfortunately for the Raptors, a free agent at the end of this year, I believe. He could command a very significant pay raise. I don't know if he's a max player. I think I've heard that thrown around a little bit, but he could be pretty close to a franchise guy. So the first Toronto Raptor to ever score 30 and 10 in a playoff game, reading earlier today, got off to a great start. I think Serge Ibaka off the bench, 26 points. So production pretty much all around. So a really, really good start for the Toronto Raptors, who had a really good bubble play-in before the official playoffs started today. They had already kind of long secured the second seed and knew for quite some time that they were going to draw a first-round matchup with the Brooklyn Nets. So I feel like it's almost come full circle a little bit. Around the time that you and I both moved up here, 2014, that's when the Toronto Raptors sort of reinvented themselves and elevated their status to relevancy in the NBA landscape.
They became a household name.
That's
right.
You
expected to see them in the playoffs, and anything could happen from there.
And that's where they were just initially making their mark, and they ran into a very veteran Brooklyn Nets squad.
Right.
Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and they hurt them. Got all the way to a deciding Game 7, and I believe it was a DeMar DeRozan miss at the buzzer that could have propelled them to the second round. The Toronto Raptors as a franchise have not looked back since that moment. Of course, had a number of years in a row where they ran into LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that was always as far as they got. Right. But in the last couple of years, have elevated their play to heights unforeseen. And now, as they face the Nets for the first time since, I believe, a completely different franchise, two franchises, actually not in very different places right now. The Nets themselves are very much on the up, and when you throw in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the development of Chris LeVert, Dinwiddie, they're going to be a really good team. Yeah. I think when they're healthy next year, they're easily a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. There could be some significant shakeups atop the East. Potentially one more season of Giannis in Milwaukee. A lot of people saying that how the Bucks do this postseason will dramatically impact what decisions he makes as his free agency approaches as well. So the Nets very much on the up, but the Raptors now are the team that they were back in 2014. They're that veteran team, that team that knows how to win.
Right.
And really kicking off the 2020 playoffs, I think, as I expected them to. Had a little bit of a hurdle in their first-round matchup against the Orlando Magic last year, dropping Game 1.
Right.
You know, a lot of Raptors fans at the time thinking, oh, my goodness, like, are we doing this again?
Yeah.
Then they win 4 straight.
Yeah.
And then they beat the Sixers, beat the Bucks, beat the Warriors. The rest is history. A really good win. Shot the lights out from behind the arc, and really production across the board, everyone in the starting units, and then production off the bench as well with Serge Ibaka dropping 26. So,
and that was pretty much what you predicted last week was, like we said, this is a team that gets it done by committee.
Yeah.
The whole team contributes defensively and offensively, and you see that in the results of tonight's game. All starting 5, double digits, and then even, like you said, Serge Ibaka, 26 minutes, 22 points.
Yep.
That's pretty great production.
Very good.
Terrence Davis, 12 minutes, 11 points.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone contributing.
Yeah.
And that's probably what they're going to have to continue doing as they go deeper, presumably.
Yeah.
Go deeper into the playoffs.
And getting some love finally from their American friends in the media business. Terrence Davis was one of the 3 or 5 named candidates for Rookie of the Year. He won't get it, but nice even to get that recognition. Another undrafted Toronto Raptor. The makeup of the organization is really something.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of underdogs. Their highest pick, not very high compared to a lot of teams who have built around first overall picks, even, lottery picks.
Right.
And the Raptors don't have that. They have a lot of blue-collar guys who play really hard every single night. A lot of teams saying they're so hard to prepare for because Nick Nurse will just throw so many different defenses at you. And now that you've got your anchor in Marc Gasol healthy, and everyone in that starting 5 and then the bench committed to the defensive end of the floor, can guard multiple positions. They're a lengthy, a versatile team. And now they're so lethal behind the arc, really just that much harder to keep up with. And then you've got the engine in Kyle Lowry, the elevated play of Fred VanVleet, the rising stardom of Pascal Siakam, and then you've got your vets in there too, Serge and Marc Gasol. Again, there's nothing stopping them from doing what they did last year again, and I think that's the most remarkable thing with the exits of Kawhi and Danny. They increase, even with the 8 games, factoring into their win-loss, increase their win percentage from a year ago, and that's without their finals MVP. So across the board, improvement. I think the sky's pretty high for this postseason as well. Yeah,
and we talked about last week, there seemed to be a lot of headlines coming out, and we weren't sure if it was just people needing something to write about.
Right.
But there was a lot of talk about Pascal Siakam.
Yeah.
How is he looking? Is he got his head in it? Is there something going on with him? I think you determined that it was just people looking for something to write about.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had a pretty good game today, 18 points, 11 rebounds. That's the point the part that jumps off the board there. So he's clearly, he's not worried about getting in the dirty areas. So if there is something like physically going on with him, he certainly didn't let it get in the way of his performance in Game 1. So that's obviously got to be very encouraging for the Raptors.
And you know what? The rotations may end up tightening up a little bit as play goes on and games become more meaningful. Maybe Nick Nurse rolls out an 8-man, 9-man rotation. You don't get minutes from the back end of the bench quite as much. But the thing is, whoever he has on the floor is going to give it to you on both ends.
Right.
And if you don't necessarily get the point production from someone like Siakam, like you said, he's going to be active on the glass, but he's also going to D up and be a very disruptive presence on the defensive end. And everyone 1 through 5 is the same. There's a total commitment to the defensive end of the floor. Like you said, a bit of a shootout tonight.
Yeah.
But towards the more intense games as this playoffs rolls on, we might not see these 134, 110 affairs and might get a little bit tighter. But again, people just looking, and there's always going to be those articles. What's going to prevent Team A or Team B from reaching the top? The narrative with the Raptors is they don't have a de facto go-to guy in the clutch. But like you said, it's by committee. They have guys that all have championship experience now, all contributed in various different ways, and know what it takes to play at the highest level, and can all contribute on both ends of the floor. So that's why I didn't read into it too much, and it was a great Game 1, and I think this could be a short series.
Well, there it is.
Maybe 5.
Wow.
I'm going to say 5. I'll give the Nets one. They're a young team on the up.
Oh,
so
you're too kind.
I'll give them
too
1.
Kind, Michael. All right. Well, we're wrapping things up quickly here on Cabin Sports Radio, coming to the end of our time once again. But I don't know if you saw this, but very cool thing. Obviously, would never happen if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic. But very cool thing that the Raptors did. I think you said this started with Phoenix?
The Suns, I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
So taking a page out of their book.
So they had the families, the kids, the wives, the brothers, the sisters, whoever was available, make little videos introducing the starting lineup for the Toronto Raptors. Very cool stuff, and that's how we're going to end off today's show. We will talk to you next week. Have a good one. Cabin Sports Radio.
In Barcelona, number 33, my daddy Margasol.
Up forward, 2.08 from Cameroon, number 43, Pascal Siakam. Let's go Raptors!
Introducing the starting small forward from London, England, OG Anunoby.